The crystal being stood in the center of the great hall, and her light grew dim as she spoke. Ambassador Zixthera had traveled from the far edge of space to bring terrible news to the Galactic Council. Around her sat creatures from 73 different worlds, each one representing their people in this emergency meeting. Some looked like giant insects with many arms, others were made of living metal that moved like water, and some were just clouds of gas that glowed in different colors. They all listened as the crystal being shared her message of doom. "The Devourers have taken 47 worlds in the past 6 months," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the massive chamber. "We have lost contact with the entire outer rim. Every fleet we send against them becomes stronger food for their hunger. They eat our ships, our weapons, even our energy shields. Nothing stops them." The hall filled with worried sounds as each species talked in their own language. Fear spread through the room like smoke from a fire. These were the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, beings who had mastered space travel when Earth's humans were still living in caves. Yet they faced an enemy they could not understand or defeat. High Admiral Veltar of the Centaurian fleet stood up. His blue skin seemed pale as he spoke. "Our combined forces tried to stop them at the Kepler defense line. We brought 2,000 ships, the largest fleet in galactic history. The Devourers destroyed us in 3 hours. They consumed our plasma cannons and used the energy to grow bigger. Every shot we fired made them stronger." Far above the council chamber, on the observation deck of Orbital Station New Geneva, Commander Jake Morrison watched the alien meeting through thick windows. He was a human, one of the newer species to make contact with galactic civilization. At 35 years old, Jake had spent his whole adult life in Earth's military. He had fought in 3 wars on his home planet before humanity discovered they were not alone in the universe. "Sir, the Council is asking for our help," said Lieutenant Casey Adams as she walked up beside him. Casey was young, maybe 25, with short red hair and green eyes that never missed anything important. She carried a data pad with the official message from the aliens below. Jake looked surprised. "They want our help? The same aliens who said we were too violent to join their club 5 years ago?" The memory was still fresh in Jake's mind. When Earth first made contact with the galaxy, humanity had applied to join the Galactic Council. The application was rejected quickly. The Council said humans were too aggressive, too primitive, and too dangerous for civilized space. They pointed to Earth's long history of wars and violence as proof that humans could never fit in with peaceful galactic society. Dr. Elena Rodriguez joined them at the window. She was Earth's top expert on alien life forms and had been studying the Devourers for weeks. Elena was a small woman with dark hair and smart brown eyes behind thick glasses. She spent most of her time reading reports from the battlefield and trying to understand how these new enemies worked. "I have been looking at their combat data," Elena said, holding up her own data pad. "The Devourers are different from anything we have seen before. They do not just destroy things like normal weapons, they actually eat matter and energy. Every attack they absorb makes them larger and stronger." Jake frowned as he thought about this. "So standard weapons make them worse?" "Exactly. The galactic fleets use energy weapons, plasma cannons, particle beams, photon torpedoes. All of these feed the Devourers. It is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline." "What about physical weapons? Bullets, missiles, explosives?" Elena shook her head. "The galaxy stopped using those thousands of years ago. They think such weapons are primitive and wasteful. Every species here evolved past kinetic warfare." Through the window they could see the council meeting getting more heated. Several aliens were arguing loudly, their strange voices creating a mix of sounds that hurt human ears. Some were flashing different colors, others were making gesture with multiple arms, and a few were releasing clouds of colored gas. "They are scared," Casey observed. "I have never seen the aliens act like this before." Jake nodded. In the 5 years since first contact, he had seen the galactic species as proud and confident. They had technology that seemed like magic to humans. Their ships could travel between stars in days, their medicine could cure any disease, and their energy sources never ran out. To see them afraid was shocking. "Sir," Casey said, reading from her data pad, "the message is official. The Galactic Council formally requests military assistance from Earth. They want to know if humanity is willing to help defend the galaxy. Dr. Rodriguez looked thoughtful. There might be a reason they are asking us. Every species in the galaxy evolved differently than humans. Most of them were prey animals. They learned to run and hide from predators. Others were ambush hunters who attacked only when they were sure to win. But humans evolved as persistence hunters. What does that mean? Casey asked. It means our ancestors chased prey across vast distances until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Humans never gave up, never stopped hunting, never quit, no matter how tired or hurt they became. We evolved to keep fighting even when we were losing. Jake understood immediately. And that makes us different from every other species in the galaxy. Very different. When galactic fleets lose a battle, they retreat and regroup. They follow rules of war that try to limit damage and save lives. They fight like civilized beings who value honor and mercy. The Devourers probably do not care about honor or mercy, Jake said. No, they do not. And neither do humans when we are really fighting for survival. The three humans stood in silence, watching the alien council below continue their heated debate. Jake thought about Earth's military history. Thousands of years of wars where humans had learned to fight dirty, to use any weapon available, to never surrender even when defeat seemed certain. Casey, send a message to Earth Command, Jake finally said. Tell them the galaxy needs help and humanity might be the only species crazy enough to provide it. As Casey typed the message, Jake continued watching the aliens below. They had rejected humanity because humans were too violent for civilized society. Now they needed that violence to save them all. The irony was not lost on him. Sir, Elena said quietly, if we do this, if we show them how humans really fight, there will be no going back. They will see what we are capable of. Jake smiled grimly. Maybe it is time they learned why Earth's application was rejected. General Patricia Hayes stood before the most important people on Earth in the emergency meeting room in Geneva. The United Earth Council had been called together faster than ever before in history. Presidents, prime ministers, and military leaders from every nation sat around the huge oval table, all looking at the woman who commanded all of humanity's military forces. Patricia was 52 years old and had been a soldier for 30 years. She had short gray hair and cold blue eyes that had seen too many battles. Scars on her hands told stories of fights she had won when she was younger. Now she commanded millions of soldiers and thousands of ships, but she had never faced anything like the current situation. The aliens are asking for our help, she said to the room. The same aliens who rejected us 5 years ago because we were too violent now want us to use that violence to save them. President Kevin Walsh leaned forward in his chair. He was a tall man with kind eyes who had been elected because he promised peace, not war. General, explain what makes this different from any other military situation we have faced. Sir, the Kui, galactic species have better technology than us in almost every way. Their ships are faster, their weapons hit harder, their shields are stronger, and their computers are smarter. But they fight like they are playing a game with rules. Secretary of Defense Marcus Johnson, a heavy man with thick glasses, looked confused. What kind of rules? Patricia activated a large screen that showed recordings from recent battles between galactic fleets and the Devourers. The humans watched as beautiful alien ships moved in perfect formations, firing colorful energy, beams at dark twisted shapes that seemed to absorb the attacks. Watch how they fight, Patricia said, pointing at the screen. They line up in formations like soldiers on a parade ground. They announce their attacks before they make them. They try to minimize damage to civilian areas. They retreat when they take too many losses. They follow something called the Galactic Code of Warfare. The room watched as alien fleets pulled back after losing only a small percentage of their ships. The Devourers, meanwhile, kept attacking until every last one of their creatures was destroyed. They fight like gentlemen, observed the representative from Brazil. Very honorable. Honorable and dead, Patricia replied coldly. The Devourers do not follow any rules. They do not care about honor or civilian casualties or minimizing damage. They just consume and grow stronger. Dr. Lisa Chen, the director of strategic analysis, stood up to address the council. She was a small Asian woman with a sharp mind who had studied every war in human history. Her job was to understand how humans fought differently from everyone else. "I have analyzed every battle report from the galactic fleets," Lisa said, calling up new images on the screen. "Every single species fights the same way. They use advanced technology to achieve tactical superiority, then apply that superiority in a controlled manner. When they start losing, they retreat to preserve their forces." "And humans?" President Walsh asked. "Humans do the opposite of everything. They do. When we are losing, we fight harder. When we are outnumbered, we find ways to make the enemy more outnumbered. When our technology fails, we improvise with whatever we can find." Colonel Ryan Murphy stood up from his seat near the back of the room. Ryan commanded Earth's Special Forces, the soldiers who did the jobs that regular armies could not do. He was a thin man with dark hair and scars on his face from missions that were still classified. "Mr. President," Ryan said, "I have been reading their tactical reports about the Devourers. These enemies expect their opponents to fight fair. They have never faced an enemy that would load a civilian transport ship with explosives and ram it into their command vessel." The room fell completely silent. Several world leaders looked shocked at the suggestion. "Colonel," the British Prime Minister said slowly, "are you suggesting we use terrorist tactics?" "I am suggesting we use human tactics," Ryan replied calmly. "The galaxy has rules about what weapons you can use, what targets you can attack, and how you are supposed to treat prisoners. Humans have different rules." General Hayes stepped forward again. "Our rules are simple. Win the war. Protect innocent people. Everything else is negotiable." President Walsh looked around the room at the other world leaders. Some looked excited, others looked worried, and a few looked terrified. "General, what exactly are you proposing?" "I am proposing we show the galaxy why they rejected our membership application. We are not civilized like them. We do not fight fair. We use every dirty trick, every desperate strategy, and every ruthless tactic we can think of." Dr. Chen brought up a new image showing human military history. Pictures of ancient battles, modern wars, and space conflicts filled the screen. Every other species in the galaxy evolved from prey animals or ambush predators. They learned to avoid fights or to only fight when they were certain to win. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. "Explain that," requested the Chinese premier. "Our ancestors hunted by chasing animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. We did not need to be faster or stronger than our prey. We just needed to never give up, never stop running, never quit no matter how tired or hurt we became." Colonel Murphy nodded. "That hunting instinct is still in our DNA. When humans go to war, we do not stop until the enemy surrenders or dies. We adapt to every situation. We improvise weapons from whatever we can find, and we keep fighting even when we should be dead." The Russian president, a stern woman with gray hair, spoke up. "What about casualties? The galactic species try to minimize their losses. And that is why they are losing," General Hayes replied. "They value the lives of their soldiers more than victory. Humans understand that sometimes you have to sacrifice soldiers to win the war." President Walsh looked uncomfortable. "General, we cannot just throw away human lives." "Sir, I am not suggesting we waste lives. I am suggesting we use the fact that humans are willing to die for a cause as a weapon. The galaxy has never seen soldiers who volunteer for suicide missions. They have never fought an enemy that treats death as just another tool in the toolbox." The room erupted in discussion as world leaders talked among themselves in different languages. Some were arguing loudly, others were whispering, and a few were making phone calls to their governments. Dr. Chen waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. "There is something else that makes humans unique. Every other species has evolved past the use of kinetic weapons. Bullets, missiles, explosives, they consider such weapons primitive. But kinetic weapons might be exactly what we need against the Devourers," added Colonel Murphy. "Energy weapons feed them and make them stronger, but a simple bullet or missile might actually hurt them." General Hayes looked around the room at all the world leaders. "Ladies and gentlemen, the choice is simple. We can stay out of this war and watch the galaxy burn, knowing that eventually the devourers will come for Earth. Or we can show 73 advanced civilizations what human warfare really looks like. President Walsh was quiet for a long time before speaking. If we do this, if we agree to help them, what happens afterward? How do we explain to the galaxy that we had to become monsters to save them? We do not explain anything, Hayes replied. We show them that sometimes the most civilized thing you can do is unleash the beast. The vote was taken electronically, with each world leader entering their decision privately. When the results appeared on the main screen, it was unanimous. Earth would go to war. Admiral Nicole Foster stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. Ships from dozens of different species floated in perfect formation around the Proxima defense line, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and advanced technology. The alien vessels looked like works of art, smooth curves, glowing sections, and elegant designs that had taken thousands of years to perfect. In the middle of this beautiful fleet sat 12 human ships that looked like they had been built in a scrapyard. The hulls were gray and angular, covered with weapon pods and armor plating that made them appear crude compared to their alien allies. Nicole was proud of those ugly ships because she knew what they could do. Human vessels, maintain standard formation, came the transmission from Admiral Veltar commanding the Centaurian fleet. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had won 100 battles using proper tactics and advanced technology. We will engage the enemy at maximum range with coordinated bombardment patterns. Nicole looked at Captain Danny Brooks standing beside her. Danny commanded the destroyer Earth's Fury and had been Nicole's friend since they were both young officers. He had dark skin and a smile that made people trust him, but his eyes showed the hardness of someone who had fought in many wars. "Copy that, Admiral," Nicole replied to the alien commander. "We will be right behind you." Danny raised an eyebrow at her polite response. They both knew that human ships would not be staying in formation for very long. Through the view screen, they could see the Devourer fleet approaching. The enemy ships did not look like ships at all. They were twisted masses of dark matter that seemed to bend light around them. Some were as large as cities, others were small and fast like deadly insects. All of them radiated hunger and overwhelming need to consume everything they touched. "Contact in 30 minutes, reported Lieutenant Kevin Park from the sensor station. Kevin was young and nervous, this being his first major battle, but his hands were steady as he worked his controls. The battle began exactly as the aliens had planned. The galactic fleet opened fire at extreme range, filling space with brilliant beams of energy. Plasma cannons sent streams of superheated gas toward the enemy. Particle beams fired invisible death at light speed, and photon torpedoes created small suns when they exploded. It was the most beautiful and terrible light show Nicole had ever seen. The Devourers absorbed every attack. The energy weapons that should have destroyed them instead made them larger and stronger. Dark tentacles reached out from the enemy ships to catch plasma beams and pull them in like food. The more the galactic fleet fired, the more powerful their enemies became. "All human vessels break formation," Nicole ordered calmly. "Execute Pattern Omega." Captain Susan Taylor of the cruiser Savage responded immediately. Susan was a redhead with freckles who looked like she should be teaching school instead of commanding a warship, but she had the coldest tactical mind in the human fleet. Her ship dove toward the largest Devourer construct, accelerating to ramming speed. "Admiral Foster, what are your ships doing?" Admiral Veltar's transmission crackled. With alarm. "Captain Taylor will be destroyed." "No, sir," Nicole replied without emotion. "She is ammunition." The Savage had been loaded with experimental gravitational charges that could tear holes in space itself. Susan and her crew of 300 had volunteered for this mission, knowing they would not survive. As their ship struck the massive Devourer construct, the explosion created a black hole that consumed the enemy vessel and 3 others nearby. Captain Alex Rivera emerged from the shadow of an asteroid in his modified submarine Deep Strike. Alex had been a submarine commander on Earth before joining the space fleet, and his ship still fought like it was underwater. The hull was scarred and patched, held together with spare parts and determination. Target acquired, Alex reported, as his ship moved toward a medium-sized devourer vessel. Initiating boarding protocol. Boarding? Admiral Veltar sounded confused. Their ships are toxic to all known life forms. Good thing we brought environmental suits, Alex replied as his crew prepared to teleport directly onto the enemy ship. Each Marine carried enough nuclear charges to destroy a city. They would plant the bombs and detonate them manually, dying in the explosion but taking a major enemy vessel with them. The alien admiral watched in horror as human ships performed impossible maneuvers. When Captain Gary Thompson's fighter squadron ran out of missiles, they used their ships as guided weapons. When the destroyer Phoenix took critical damage and its crew was dying from radiation poisoning, they aimed their ship at the enemy fleet and activated the reactor overload. "This is insane," Admiral Veltar transmitted to Admiral Foster. "Your people are committing suicide." "No, sir," Nicole corrected him. "They are winning." Captain Beth Williams commanded a Marine transport that had been cut off behind enemy lines. Her ship was damaged and surrounded by Devourer fighters with no hope of escape. Instead of surrendering, Beth ordered her crew to activate the dead man switches they all carried. The explosion created a crater that could be seen from orbit, taking out 50 enemy fighters and clearing a path for the rest of the human fleet. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked frantically at her science station, analyzing Devourer behavior patterns. She had been transferred to Nicole's flagship to provide tactical advice during the battle. Her computers showed something interesting. "Admiral," Elena called out, "the Devourers are adapting more slowly than expected. I think they are confused by our tactics." "Confused how?" Nicole asked while watching another human ship ram itself into an enemy vessel. "They have never encountered a species that weaponizes sacrifice. Every other race they have fought tried to preserve their forces, maintain tactical advantages, and minimize losses. We do the exact opposite." On the planet New Sparta below, Colonel Ryan Murphy's ground forces had been fighting a running battle against Devourer landing parties for 6 days. The humans had given up trying to hold territory and instead focused on making every step forward, cost the enemy dearly. They booby-trapped every building before retreating. They poisoned water supplies and food stores. They turned the planet's own industrial facilities into massive bombs. When the Devourers took a position, they found nothing but death waiting for them. "Sir," Sergeant Tony Martinez reported from his position in the ruins of the capital city, "the charges are all set. When they take the government building, the whole city goes up." Ryan nodded grimly. The nuclear charges hidden throughout the city would kill 50 million Devourer troops in one explosion. It was a terrible price to pay, but it would eliminate a significant portion of the enemy force. Lieutenant Sam Carter, monitoring enemy communications from her bunker, suddenly looked up in surprise. "Colonel, something is happening. The Devourers are pulling back from the city." "What?" Ryan could not believe what he was hearing. "They are retreating?" "Yes, sir. All ground forces are withdrawing to their ships. They are leaving the planet." Ryan stared at his tactical display showing Devourer forces fleeing from positions they had fought hard to take. "They are scared," he realized. "They are actually scared of us." In space, Admiral Foster watched as the remaining Devourer ships began to retreat from the battle. The human fleet had lost 8 of its 12 ships, but they had destroyed over half the enemy force. More importantly, they had broken the Devourer's will to fight. "Admiral Veltar," Nicole transmitted to the alien commander, "recommend we pursue and finish them off." "Negative," came the reply. "We have won this battle. There is no need for further bloodshed." Nicole shook her head. This was exactly the kind of thinking that had allowed the Devourers to spread across the galaxy. The aliens won a battle and considered the job done. Humans understood that you had to destroy your enemy completely, or they would return stronger. "All human vessels," Nicole ordered. "Pursuit course. We finish this today." The 4 surviving human ships chased the fleeing Devourers deeper into space, ignoring the protest from their alien allies. They hunted the enemy ships like wolves chasing wounded prey, never letting them rest or regroup. By the time the human fleet returned to the Proxima defense line, There were no Devourer survivors. The war had become a nightmare that the Devourers never expected to face. For thousands of years, they had consumed civilizations across the galaxy, each one following the same predictable patterns. The prey species would fight bravely using their best technology, lose several battles, then negotiate for peace or retreat to defend their core worlds. The Devourers had eaten entire star systems this way, growing stronger with each victory. But humans were different, and the Devourers were learning this in the most painful way possible. Captain Gary Thompson led his fighter squadron on their 15th mission in 3 days. Gary was 28 years old with blonde hair and blue eyes that had once been full of laughter. Now those eyes were cold and focused on one thing: killing every devourer he could find. His fighters were old and beaten up, held together with spare parts and prayer, but they still flew. "Red Squadron, we are out of missiles," Gary reported to his wing commander. His fuel gauge showed critical levels, and his life support was running on backup power. A normal pilot would return to base for resupply. "Copy, Red Leader," came the response. "Return to carrier for rearm and refuel." Gary looked at his tactical display showing a group of Devourer fighters attacking a refugee convoy. The alien civilians had no chance against those monsters without immediate help. He made his decision. "Negative. Red Squadron, follow my lead. Ramming speed." Gary's 12 fighters dove toward the enemy formation, like bullets fired from heaven. They struck the Devourer ships at full velocity, the explosions lighting up space as both human and alien craft were destroyed. The refugee convoy escaped safely. Admiral Nicole Foster stood on the bridge of her new flagship, watching the tactical display. Her original ship had been destroyed 2 weeks ago when she rammed it into a Devourer command vessel. The explosion had taken out half the enemy fleet, but Nicole barely escaped in a lifepod. The destroyer Phoenix limped across the screen, its hull breached in a dozen places and radiation leaking from its damaged reactor. Captain Mike Davis and his crew should have been dead hours ago, but they kept fighting. They had used a dying star's gravity to slingshot their ship at incredible speed into the heart of a Devourer formation. "Phoenix reports mission accomplished," Lieutenant Kevin Park announced from his station. "Enemy command ship destroyed." Nicole nodded. Mike and his crew of 200 were heroes, but they would not survive the radiation poisoning. They knew this when they volunteered for the mission. "Admiral Foster," came a transmission from Admiral Veltar commanding the Galactic Fleet. "This is madness. Your species fights without any regard for survival." Nicole considered this criticism carefully before responding. "With respect, sir, you are wrong. We fight because survival is all we care about. Not just our own survival, the survival of everything we are protecting." Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked at her science station, studying the Devourer behavioral patterns. She had been analyzing enemy communications and movement for weeks, trying to understand how their minds worked. What she found surprised her. "Admiral," Elena called out, "I am seeing something strange in their tactical responses. The Devourers are adapting to our strategies much slower than they should be." "What do you mean?" Nicole asked while watching. Human ships execute another impossible maneuver on the main screen. Their intelligence is based on consuming other civilizations and learning from them. They should be able to counter our tactics within a few battles. Instead, they seem confused and unable to predict our next moves. Lieutenant Sam Carter, who had been transferred from ground forces to help with communications analysis, looked up from her console. "Ma'am, I think I know why. I have been monitoring their internal transmissions and they keep asking the same question. Which is, why do the humans keep fighting when they are clearly going to die?" Elena nodded thoughtfully. "That explains everything. The Devourers have never encountered a species that weaponizes self-sacrifice. Every other race they fought tried to preserve their forces and minimize casualties. We do the exact opposite." On the mining world of Kepler-7, Major Lisa Park commanded the last human outpost in the system. Lisa was 35 years old with brown hair and green eyes that had seen too much death in recent weeks. Her forces had been fighting a desperate, defensive action for 10 days against overwhelming numbers. The Devourers had learned not to attack human positions directly. Instead, they surrounded each outpost and waited for the defenders to run out of supplies. It was a smart strategy that would work against any normal enemy, but humans were not normal. Major, Sergeant Dave Miller reported from the communications bunker, "We have enough food for maybe 2 more days. Ammunition is almost gone." Lisa looked at the tactical map showing Devourer forces completely surrounding their position. There were millions of them out there, waiting patiently for the humans to surrender or starve. They did not understand that humans had a third option. "Dave, send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we are going to try something new." "What kind of message, ma'am?" "Tell them we found a way to turn this entire planet into a bomb." The plan was simple and insane in equal measure. Kepler-7 was a mining world with massive industrial facilities designed to process rare metals. Lisa's engineers had figured out how to overload the fusion reactors and create a chain reaction that would destroy the planet. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Tony Barnes said quietly, "we will not survive this." "I know, Tony, but 50 million Devourers will not survive it either." The young officer nodded. He was scared, but he understood the mathematics. Trading 400 human lives for 50 million enemy troops was a bargain any commander would take. When the explosion came, it was visible from 3 star systems away. The entire planet cracked open like an egg, releasing energy that had been building in its core for millions of years. The Devourer fleet surrounding Kepler-7 simply vanished in the fire. Captain Alex Rivera sat in his damaged submarine Deep Strike, hidden in the atmosphere of a gas giant. Alex had been hunting Devourers for weeks, using hit-and-run tactics that drove the enemy crazy with frustration. His ship looked like it should have fallen apart days ago, but it kept fighting. "Captain," his weapons officer reported, "we have 1 torpedo left." Alex studied his tactical display. There was a Devourer command ship in orbit around the planet below. It was huge and heavily defended, probably containing thousands of enemy troops. 1 torpedo would not be enough to destroy it, unless the torpedo was his ship. "All hands, prepare for ramming attack. Set the reactor to overload on impact." His crew of 60 worked quickly to prepare their submarine for its final mission. They loaded the torpedo tubes with every explosive they had, then aimed their ship at the enemy vessel like a bullet. The Deep Strike struck the Devourer command ship, at incredible speed, the explosion tearing a hole in space itself. Both ships were destroyed instantly, but the tactical impact was enormous. The enemy had lost another irreplaceable command vessel. Back on Earth, General Patricia Hayes received reports from the front lines with growing amazement. Human forces were winning battles they should have lost, destroying enemies that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. The cost was terrible. Humanity was losing ships and soldiers at an alarming rate, but they were winning. "Ma'am," Colonel Murphy reported from his position at Fleet Headquarters, "we are getting strange reports from captured Devourer communications. They are starting to retreat from systems they could easily take." "Why?" Patricia asked. "Because they are afraid of us. They do not understand why humans keep fighting when defeat is certain. They do not understand why we choose death over surrender. It goes against everything they learned from consuming other civilizations." Patricia smiled grimly. Fear was a weapon that humans understood very well. If the Devourers were afraid, they could be defeated. "Colonel, send orders to all human units. No prisoners, no mercy, no retreat. We hunt them down and destroy every last one." "Ma'am, the Galactic Fleet commanders are complaining about our tactics. They say we are being too aggressive." "The Galactic Fleet commanders can kiss my ass," Patricia replied coldly. "We are winning. This war their way never could. The Devourers had made a fatal mistake. They had awakened Earth's beasts, and now those beasts were hunting them across the galaxy. 1 year after the first human ships entered the war, the Devourer threat was finally over. The last enemy vessel had been hunted down and destroyed in the empty space between galaxies, its crew consumed by the same hunger they had brought to so many worlds. But victory had come at a price that left scars across human civilization. General Patricia Hayes stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council on the neutral world of Harmony. The great chamber was packed with representatives from 73 species, all looking at the human military commander with a mixture of gratitude and horror. Patricia wore her dress uniform with pride, But the medals on her chest told a story of sacrifice that few could understand. The cost had been terrible. 40% of humanity's military forces were gone, vaporized in suicide attacks or lost in desperate battles across the galaxy. 8 human colonies had been evacuated and turned into massive bombs to stop devourer advances. 3 cities on Earth itself had been sacrificed when enemy forces landed on the homeworld. The devourer threat has been eliminated, Patricia reported to the assembled aliens. Our long-range scouts have confirmed that the remaining enemy forces have retreated beyond the galactic rim and show no signs of returning. Ambassador Zixathara, the crystal being who had first brought news of the devourer invasion, pulsed with relief. Humanity has saved us all. The Council owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Patricia smiled coldly. Actually, there is something you can do for us. The chamber fell silent. Every alien representative leaned forward to hear what the humans would demand as payment for their service. 5 years ago, Earth applied for membership in the Galactic Council. The application was rejected because we were deemed too aggressive, too primitive, and too dangerous for civilized society. Patricia paused, looking around the chamber at species that had watched humans sacrifice everything to save them. I want that decision reconsidered. Uncomfortable murmurs filled the hall. Several alien representatives began talking among themselves in their native languages, creating a symphony of strange sounds. Surely, began the Altarian representative, a tall, thin creature with purple skin. After what we have witnessed, the previous concerns about human aggression are even more valid. What you witnessed, Patricia interrupted, was humanity at war. You saw what we become when everything we care about is threatened. But that is not who we are in peacetime. President Kevin Walsh appeared on the main screen as a hologram transmission from Earth. The war had aged him terribly. His hair was now completely gray and his face showed the strain of making decisions that cost millions of lives. The same humans who turned their ships into weapons to stop the devourers are the same ones who spent the last year sharing our medical technology freely with refugee populations, the president said. The soldiers who destroyed planets to deny them to the enemy are the same ones who have been rebuilding worlds the devourers damaged. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward with a data pad containing psychological analysis of human behavior. Elena had survived the war by staying on command ships rather than frontline vessels, but she had lost many friends and colleagues in the fighting. Human psychological profiles show that our capacity for violence is matched only by our capacity for compassion, she explained to the alien assembly. We fight wars to end them. We sacrifice ourselves to save others, even strangers we have never met. Admiral Nicole Foster, wearing the uniform of the human space fleet, addressed the council directly. Nicole had commanded the final hunt for devourer survivors, chasing them across empty space until every last enemy was destroyed. Her ships had been relentless, giving no quarter and accepting no surrender. You were right to fear us, Nicole said to the assembled aliens. But you were wrong about what to fear. Do not fear our weapons or our tactics. Fear what happens when you give us a reason to use them. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives debated among themselves. Some species argued that humans had proven they were too dangerous to be trusted. Others pointed out that humanity had saved the galaxy when their own advanced civilizations had failed. The vote was taken electronically, with each species entering their decision privately. When the results appeared on the main screen, it was unanimous. Earth was formally welcomed into galactic civilization as a full member, but the real conversation happened afterward, when Ambassador Zixathara approached General Hayes privately. The crystal being's light was dim with exhaustion and something that might have been fear. I must ask, the alien diplomat said, what would have happened if we had refused your application again? Hayes smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. Nothing. We would have continued to be your neighbors, your trading partners, and your friends, but you would have continued to be under our protection, whether you wanted it or not. Protection? The universe asked for help, and Earth answered. We did not do it for citizenship or recognition. We did it because it was the right thing to do. Hayes turned to leave. then paused. The galaxy is a dangerous place. It needs guardians who understand that sometimes the most civilized thing you can do is unleash the beast. 6 months later, the first human peacekeeping force was established with bases throughout the galaxy. The recruitment posters that appeared on Earth carried a simple message that captured the new relationship between humanity and the stars. The universe asked for help. We delivered. Join the guard. At the bottom, in smaller text, was humanity's new motto as adopted by the Galactic Council: we fight so others do not have to. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, stood on the bridge of the first human peacekeeping vessel. The ship was called Guardian, and it patrolled the outer rim of galactic space, watching for new threats. Jake was older now, his hair gray and his face marked by the weight of command. Admiral, Lieutenant Casey Adams reported from the communication station. We are receiving a distress signal from the Vega system. Pirates are attacking civilian transports. Jake smiled. Pirates were a problem that galactic civilization had struggled with for centuries. Their advanced technology and civilized rules of engagement made it difficult to stop raiders who ignored all laws and treaties. But pirates had never faced human peacekeepers. Set course for Vega, Jake ordered. Maximum speed. Sir, Casey asked, should we contact the local authorities and coordinate our response? Negative. By the time we coordinate with local forces, those civilians will be dead or enslaved. Jake looked at the tactical display showing the pirate fleet. We handle this the human way. The Guardian accelerated toward the Vega system like a predator hunting prey. Behind it followed a dozen other human ships, each one crewed by veterans of the Devourer War. They had learned how to fight enemies that were larger, stronger, and better equipped than they were. Pirates would be easy compared to Devourers. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now serving as scientific advisor to the peacekeeping force, studied the long-term implications of humanity's new role in galactic society. The war had changed everything, not just for humans, but for every species in the galaxy. The other civilizations are adapting their military doctrines based on human tactics, she reported to Admiral Hayes during their weekly briefing. They are learning to be more aggressive, more flexible, and more willing to take casualties. Is that good or bad? Hayes asked. Both. They are becoming better at defending themselves, but they are also becoming more like us. The galaxy is becoming a more violent place. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. Violence is a tool, Elena. Like any tool, it can be used to build or destroy. The important thing is that we are the ones holding it. On distant worlds throughout the galaxy, alien children grew up hearing stories about the humans who had saved them all. The stories told of ships that fought until they were destroyed, soldiers who chose death over defeat, and a species that had turned sacrifice into an art form. Some of the stories were true. Others had grown in the telling, becoming legends that made humans seem larger than life. But all of them carried the same message. When the galaxy faced its darkest hour, Earth had answered the call. The beasts of Earth had been unleashed upon the stars, and the stars were safer for it. Humanity had found its place in galactic civilization not as the most advanced species or the most peaceful, but as the guardians who stood watch in the darkness. They were the species that others called when the rules stopped working, and civilization needed someone willing to break them.